Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. What I've done is I've enabled the chat. If you look to the left-hand side of your screen, you should see some icons over to the left. There's the chat, and then there's a Q&A. So what I've done is I've enabled the chat, and I just want to know, can everybody hear me? Can everybody see me? So just type in the chat box if you can hear or see me. Yes. Just type yes or no. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Can everybody see me? Can everybody hear me? I'll just wait a couple minutes. Just type in the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen. You should see a chat. Just click on it. The chat box will come up, and then you type yes or no. Excellent. Okay. So just thank you. So just, just a few housekeeping things before we get started. I'm going to disable chat right now. I'm going to enable it towards the end of the actual presentation. But what I will enable is I will enable the question and answer. So if you look at the left-hand side of your screen again, you will see, I think it's a question mark, for you to ask a question during the presentation. While I'm actually doing the presentation, I don't like to take any questions just because for me, there's always a lot of material to get through, and I want to make sure I get through everything from start to finish. So what I'm going to need you to do is just basically type in your question in the Q&A. I have enabled it. And then at the end of the actual presentation, there'll probably be about 10 to 15 minutes for question and answer. So I will try my best to get to all of your question and answers at that point in time. What I will say is that if I don't get to answer your question during this Hangout, as part of the Naturalista Hangout, the monthly presentations will be either an educational webinar, a hot topic, a guest interview, or there will be a Q&A or a question for people who were not able to attend, everyone on my email list. What I will do is I will send a link out just to let you know a week in advance what the Naturalista Hangout is going to be for that following week. And if you have a Q&A, you can basically send me an email, ask me a specific question, and on the Q&A segment of the Naturalista Hangout, I will try my best to get to it. So what I want to say is thank you so much for coming and just taking the time to be on this. The Naturalista Hangout is kind of something that I've started this year. And before I get started, let me just backtrack to let you know who I am. My name is Susan Walker. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. And the focus that I have as an ND is on natural hair care. And it will soon be on skincare as I complete my training to become a professional skincare therapist. For me, I've kind of done a 360 to what I wanted to do years ago, which was more aesthetics and hair care. So what I chose to focus on in my hair care, actually 6 years would have been up in August that just passed. I was the integrative medical director at a weight loss clinic here in Canada, a very a popular one. And what that means, or what that meant, is that I was responsible for training a lot of the staff. I was responsible for troubleshooting client results, and I was also responsible for researching and formulating the program. So what I also focus on in my naturopathic practice is weight loss. So I've got three kind of areas that I specialize in. And for the past 6 years, I've been really researching a lot when it has to do with natural hair care. So what I've done is I've kind of created this platform, which is the educational platform of Earth Tones Naturals. And for those of you who don't know, Earth Tones Naturals is the product line that I own. And the products are one aspect, but the other aspect, which is very near and dear to my heart, is the educational component. I really love educating and teaching and really helping women. It is a completely, it's a kind of fun kind of platform. and I've got a lot of things in the work for the Natural Institute in terms of workshops and training and that kind of thing. But one of the things that I wanted to do is kind of do a weekly session where it's kind of live, but not. I really love live environments. I do a lot of natural hair parties, and I love when women get together and we discuss natural hair, and I kind of teach, and we kind of, get to know what some of the concerns and what some of the issues are. So a lot of the topics that are going to be a part of this platform are things that have come up, are things that people have asked me, and also things that I've noticed. Hot topics will include those controversial type of issues that naturals discuss, like, for example, sulfate. Should you use them? Should you wash your hair? Should you co-wash? Should you use mineral oil? What about hair typing? All these kind of controversial topics that I believe, and it's just my opinion, prevents us from really truly being free with our natural hair, being so many constraints and confines with how we're able to wear our hair. And what you'll find with me is that anytime I do any type of educational workshop, I'll always present the facts. I'll always present what the research says. So I'll always come from that perspective. I'll interject my opinion and my experience a little bit, and it's up to you to kind of take it or leave it, just as long as you have all the facts about a specific topic. So today's topic is going to be on winter hair care, cold weather curl care. And it is one of those topics that is near and dear to my heart, just because if you can wear your hair out and it's moisturize in the wintertime, you can wear your hair out and moisturize in any season. So what we're going to discuss on this webinar today is some of the characteristics of winter weather, the issues with moisture and the science of hydration or hydrating the hair. And then I'm going to give you some takeaways that you can implement right away. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch right over to the presentation. And so during this time period, if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A section, and I'll get to them after the fact. Take notes if you'd like. I will be redirecting you after the webinar to a link where you can download the notes on this, but I'll be going into a little bit more detail than what are in the actual notes. So just take notes if you'd like. So I'm going to get started. So just bear with me as I do this. You'll see this little funky thing on your screen as I start to share my screen. All right, so let me get started with the educational webinar on cold weather curl care. So again, like I said, my name is Susan Walker. I'm a naturopathic doctor and I specialize in natural hair. And if anyone were to ask me what I really do, I help women transform their bodies and love their natural hair. I am a licensed naturopathic doctor, and for those of you who might not know what a naturopathic doctor is, we're essentially general practitioners of natural medicine. So we use a variety of different therapies. We have medical training, we have undergraduate degrees, 4 years of naturopathic medical training. We use natural therapies like acupuncture, a lot of nutrition, a lot of supplementation, a lot of lifestyle changes, and then some NDs go on to specialize in different areas or specialize in different conditions. I've chosen to specialize in more beauty and aesthetics, and more than anything else, more than chronic conditions. So that's just the area of specialty I've chosen. But we get the same training as a lot of the medical students do in terms of, how the body works, the function, which would be, anatomy and physiology and all that good stuff. I've been natural for 5 years and I've learned a lot in that time period. And I will say that I'm a former product junkie, meaning that my cupboard was filled with tons and tons and tons of products that made promises that I believed, and when I tried them, they didn't live up to my expectations. So I understand for those women who are product junkies, I completely understand where you're coming from. I am a research fanatic. So what that means is any information you're going to get from me is going to be very, very, very well researched. I don't know everything, I will admit it. There are people that know way more than me that I reference all the time, but I try to get as much information as I can so that when I bring the information to you, you don't have to go searching for all the information. One of the things I found is that while the internet is great for, we're living in the information age, it's great for researching anything. You've got the good and the bad. And sometimes if you don't know how to kind of sift through the good and the bad, you kind of get confused. And that's where I come in, and that's where the Naturalista Institute comes in to kind of sift through all that stuff to give you what are the facts, what are people's opinions, and then how can you apply this information to your hair or your lifestyle. I'm the founder and creative director of the Earth Tones Naturals product line, amazing product line for naturally curly hair, and specializing or focusing more on your, I would say, type 4 kinky curly hair. But it's great for all hair types and textures. Busy wife and mother of two beautiful girls with different hair textures. I add that in to say that, you know, I personally don't have time with very complicated long hair care regimens. And I understand that, you know, for all of you, you're more than your hair. So you don't want to spend a lot of time on your hair either. So any regimen, any protocol that I give you, I try as much as possible for it not to be time consuming, because I do understand that everybody's busy and we're honestly more than our hair. And I also, having two girls, I have to do their hair as well. And I'm preparing for my first fitness show, and I've been preparing for my first fitness show for a long time. And it's because, you know, as I've lost over the past 2 years about 40 pounds. And as I was doing this process, stuff or life got in the way. So I lost, I gained, I kind of got sidetracked. So this year, 2015, is the year that I'm actually going to actually follow through and actually get ready and do this show. So that's why I put that in there. So it's it's been a goal of mine for like 6 years. And last but not least, I've helped hundreds of women cut through the clutter of natural hair care information to help them understand their hair. And I think this is really important, to develop a personalized hair care regimen that complements their lifestyle and hair care goals. So yes, you can take a look at something online. You can, you know, get an idea of what somebody else is using. But the reality is that your hair is as unique as your fingerprint. So really, in order for you to have a personalized hair care regimen, you really have to know your hair inside out. And that takes time. For those of you who might be newly natural, don't get discouraged, because that will take time. For those of you who are more veterans, it's still taking time as you get to know your hair through different seasons and through different changes in your life. It all takes time. So the key really to getting the best out of your hair and embracing your hair is to really understand what your hair is all about, so that you can create an individualized regimen for you. So I've been featured, or my articles have been featured in various online publications: curlynikki.com, naturallycurly.com, A Million Matches, Black Ink Magazine, 3 Naturals, My Afro Fashion. I'm part of the hypehair.com bloggers network. And I am also, my articles have also been featured on the Curly Do website, which is the US distributor for the Earth Tones Naturals products. Okay, so my articles have been featured on all these websites. If you want, you can go take a look at the website, search my name, and the articles will come up. So I've written extensively on quite a few topics. And I think for me, I'm transitioning from doing a lot of writing to more this hangout, because for me personally, it suits me better. I'll still continue to contribute to my blog and to other blogs, but I love this type of format here. All right, so what I'm going to start with, and I always start with this, is a tiny bit of hair science. And don't worry, it's not going to be too technical. However, it is important to have a basic understanding of your hair and what it's composed of, so that you understand how to take care of it. What I want to talk about is the hair follicle is below the scalp there, and it's located inside the scalp. And the follicle is the living part of the hair. The base of the follicle is called the bulb. So if there's one thing I want you to remember, it's that what is actually beneath the scalp, that structure that you cannot see, that's actually what is living. Now, what you see emerging from the scalp, the part of the hair that we're most concerned with on a daily basis, that's the hair shaft. And it's not living tissue, so that is important. The hair fiber is made up of 3 layers that control its various physical characteristics, including what it looks like, its strength, its ability to take in water, and the overall health, quote unquote, of the hair. And I put health in quotations because the hair shaft is actually not living tissue. Okay, so we talk about the health of the hair. We're really talking about how the hair looks and how it behaves. The hair shaft is made up of 3 layers, and the layers are the medulla, the cortex, and the cuticle. And the 2 layers that I really want to focus on are the cortex and the cuticle. So the cortex is the most important part of the hair fiber. And it's so important that I will say it again. It's the most important part of the hair fiber. It contains the hair's keratin structure, which is basically the protein. So hair is made of protein, and that protein is called keratin. And keratin forms the basic structure of the hair. Now, the keratin is held together in a cement, and this cement is called the cell membrane complex. So that's as technical as I'll get with that. Now, the cortex of the hair also contains a substance that gives the hair its color, and this substance is called melanin, and it's also the same substance that gives skin its color. Water is essential for the maintenance of the strength and elasticity of the cortex and the hair fiber. So one thing, if you're making notes, I want you to remember that water is important for the cortex. When we talk about moisture, we're talking about moisture in the deepest parts of the hair, not on the surface of the hair, not in the cuticle, but in the cortex of the hair. Without moisture, that cortex becomes thin, it becomes frizzy, and it's much more prone to damage and breakage. So if there's a couple things I want you to take away, it's that the hair strength and elasticity come from the cortex, and that water is important for the cortex. Okay, so next we move on to the cuticle. And the cuticle has two main jobs. The first job is that it protects the hair from damage. Now, the cuticle is attached to the cortex, and it forms a very tight sheath around it. So what you're seeing here in this photograph is you're seeing what's called an electron micrograph, or a close-up image of the cuticle. And what you'll notice about the cuticle is it has scales. So the cuticle's two main jobs are to protect the hair, specifically the cortex, from damage of any form. And the second job of the cuticle is that it allows moisture in and out of the hair. So essentially what the cuticle does is it helps with the hair's moisture balance. The healthy appearance of the hair depends almost exclusively on the condition of the cuticle. And when it comes to what we're concerned with, this is the layer that we typically are most concerned with on a daily basis. So now that you have a fundamental understanding of the hair structure, let's take a look at some of the structural challenges that African textured hair, and I'll be more specific and say natural hair has, and let's talk about why it's so difficult for African hair to be moisturized. So when we compare African hair with Asian and Caucasian hair, a few differences can be found. First of all, we know that African hair is more susceptible to breakage, and the hair shaft itself is more fragile. It's inherently more fragile. The shape of the follicle, that structure that the hair actually emerges from, makes African hair weaker than other hair textures. So it doesn't take a lot of strain or pressure to break African hair. And the cuticle will break off and rupture a lot earlier than with Caucasian and Asian hair. So it's definitely more prone to breakage. Now, when it comes to combing practices, because of the tight curl formation and the degree of knotting, we all know that our hair tangles depending on our hair type and texture. Our hair can tangle quite a bit. The hair can be difficult to comb. And most breakage that occurs is due to the consistent trauma. So the constant brushing, combing, shampooing, twisting, and not necessarily an issue with the structure of the hair. So just keep in mind that when our hair breaks, it's mostly due to the handling of it. So African hair also has less moisture content, and the dryness, what the studies show is that the dryness could be due to a loss of water from the scalp. So the hair is dry and the scalp is also dry. And it turns out that African hair doesn't necessarily make less sebum, and sebum is the hair's natural oils. It doesn't make less sebum as most people think. What happens is that because of the tight curl formation in our natural hair, the sebum that is made in the sebaceous glands, which are actually beneath the scalp, can't travel throughout the entire hair shaft. And so what happens is sebum gets trapped at the base of the hair and it doesn't flow easily. And there's probably a lack of distribution along the hair shaft. So basically what happens is because the hair is not properly oiled or lubricated naturally, it compromises the hair's ability to resist water, and it reduces the slip on the hair. So what does this really all mean? It means that dry hair tangles more easily and is more difficult to comb, which contributes to the hair being more fragile. So when I speak about moisture, The moisture content in the hair refers to the moisture content in the cortex, right in the middle of the hair, that fragile area. In normal undamaged hair, very little water can get into and out of the cortex because the cuticle tends to be intact. But in African hair, the cuticle lifts, it's called a premature lifting of the cuticle. So what that means is the cuticle can lift with the same strain or stress that it takes to break other hair textures. And as a result, the hair is not able to hold moisture, which means it tends to be overly porous. And I'll get into what porosity means in a minute. So therefore, the lack of moisture balance contributes to the fragile nature of the hair. So that's essentially what that means, that the lack of moisture balance in the hair contributes to it being fragile. So as we see, moisture is extremely important. There are issues with moisturizing natural African hair, and we'll talk about how we can kind of get over those issues shortly. So now I want to discuss the basics of moisturizing hair, the science of moisturizing the hair. In order to do this, we have to go back to high school chemistry. So just bear with me. We're going to talk about the law of thermodynamics. So bear with me here. So what you're seeing here is a jar with water. And basically what you're seeing is some dye going in the water, okay? So Tanya McKay, she's a chemist, and she writes for naturallycurly.com. She points out that the laws of thermodynamics have a daily influence on the hair. And what basically the law of thermodynamics is energy cannot be created or destroyed. So thermodynamics is a study of energy, and energy will exist in many forms, such as heat, light, chemical energy, and electrical energy. So the point I'm trying to make is that everything in nature is always trying to achieve a state of balance. So molecules that are in areas of high concentration will typically move to an area where they're less concentrated until the concentration is equal in both areas. So hopefully you're still with me. This is called diffusion. So to illustrate this, you can fill a glass of water and add a few drops of ink or dye and watch the water carefully. So this is exactly what is happening in this example that I'm showing you right now. The color will sink to the bottom initially because that dye is denser than the water. However, over time, what's happening if the water is left undisturbed is that the ink in the bottom of the glass will spread upwards where it's more concentrated to where it's less concentrated at the top. So the ink that's at the bottom is more concentrated, and over time it will spread upwards to where it's less concentrated, so that there's equilibrium or an equal amount of molecules. And what you'll see in the last jar here is that there seems to be a uniform amount of dye throughout the glass in the water. So hopefully you're all with me. That's basically diffusion. So molecules moving from an area of high concentration to low concentration until they reach a state of balance. So eventually all of the water in the glass will be the same shade. And this is the point where there are no more differences in the concentration of molecules. Why is this important? Because when it comes to the hair, the same law of molecules trying to reach a state of equilibrium, and the molecules we're most concerned with are water molecules. So let's talk about humidity. Humidity is the amount of water vapor in the air. So how does this apply to the hair? Well, let's think about dry hair for a moment. Dry hair typically contain very little water. When that dry hair that contains very little water is exposed to a very humid environment that contains a lot of water, guess what's going to happen? Water molecules are going to move from an area of high concentration, which is basically the humid environment, to an area of low concentration, which is basically the dry hair, until they reach a state of equilibrium. So what is going to happen in this situation when you put dry hair in a very humid environment is that the hair will eventually become saturated with water. And natural hair is more susceptible to this because it's more porous than straight hair. So you put your natural hair in an environment where it's very, very humid country, in the middle of, any type of year, for example, and you're leaving a cold environment. What tends to happen when you get off that plane is that your hair feels very moisturized and very soft. Well, you didn't change your hair care products. You changed your environment. And the environment that you left was a cold, dry environment, and you put yourself in a humid environment with a lot of moisture. And so because those water molecules need to achieve a state of balance between your hair and the environment, water is going to move along its concentration gradient until it achieves a state of balance. So that's humidity. What in a humid environment, what happens? Well, what happens if you put your hair in the dry, cold weather? Well, dry air typically contains little to no water vapor, or it has a low relative humidity. So what's going to happen when your hair is exposed to this type of environment? Well, what's going to happen is it's going to tend to lose moisture to the atmosphere as water moves down its concentration gradient from where it's more concentrated to where it's less concentrated. So what is going to result is your hair is going to be dry, it's going to be brittle, and it's going to be prone to frizz, split ends, and breakage. And that's why, you're moisturizing your hair. You think you're moisturizing your hair in the winter, and you feel it, and it's still crunchy and dry. The main reason is because of water molecules, okay? So hair is about 10% water, and it easily absorbs and loses this water. The level of moisture in the hair depends on one key factor, and that is the humidity. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's that the level of moisture in your hair depends mostly on humidity. If the air is dry, water can be lost from the hair. If the hair is humid, the hair will absorb water. Okay, so those are the two principles. Other factors that affect the amount of water in the hair include things like if the hair is treated with heat, which can really remove a lot of moisture from the hair, and porosity. So let's talk about heat and moisture for a moment. Many naturals still use heat on their hair, and trust me, I'm not judging. You do what's best for you, but I'm just going to make you aware of what typically happens when you use any type of heat on your hair. Many women I consult with regularly blow dry and flat iron their hair because they like the look of straight, sleek hair, or because they don't know what else to do with their hair, and fair enough. So let's talk about how heat damages the hair. Water begins to leave the hair shaft at around 50 to 120 degrees Celsius. So that's about 122 degrees Fahrenheit to 248 degrees Fahrenheit. The fragile proteins, remember those keratin that are in the cortex of the hair? Well, they begin to break at 155 degrees Celsius, which is about 311 degrees Fahrenheit. And as the temperature increases to over 233 Celsius or 451 Fahrenheit, the keratin begins to melt. Healthy hair burns at about 233 degrees Celsius. So if the hair is already damaged, then the burn will occur at much lower temperatures. So essentially, heat reduces the moisture content in the hair and disrupts the protein structure. And if you constantly use heat through flat ironing or blow drying, your hair can stay permanently straight because the protein and moisture bonds in the hair fiber fail to reform, resulting in loosely curled or straight pieces. And it's important to note that heat damage can be permanent. So if you were, for example, transitioning, or if you were fully natural and you decided to, flat iron or blow dry your hair a few times, and you have some pieces that just won't go back straight no matter how much water you douse your hair with, that's damage. And those pieces need to be cut off. There is nothing that you can do about that except to cut the pieces off. So typical blow dryers will operate within 100 degrees Celsius to 170 degrees Celsius. And the hair's condition affects the maximum amount of heat it can actually tolerate. So if hair is damaged, then it won't be able to tolerate that much heat, and it will take less heat to actually damage it further. Natural hair is more fragile and less tolerant to heat than other textures. So when we're talking about typing, we're talking about types 1 and 2 hair. Fine hair is less tolerant to heat than medium and thick hair. So if your hair is fine, it is most likely or more likely to be damaged by heat than if your hair is medium to thick in terms of its strand thickness. So let's just talk about porosity now, because that is another factor that affects the amount of moisture or that can be in the hair. Porosity describes how easily water and other substances can move back and forth through the cuticle. and into and out of the cortex. So that's porosity. Hair can absorb water from the environment, and it can also lose moisture and fats or lipids through the environment. The key to healthy, soft, manageable hair is the ability for your hair to maintain proper moisture balance. And porosity is a function of the cuticle. So that's one thing I want you to remember. Recall that when I talked about the functions of the cuticle, one function was to protect the cortex. The other one was to allow moisture and other substances into and out of the hair. There are a few factors that will determine porosity, and the cuticle is probably the most important structure in moisture balance. The scales of the cuticle are flexible and they overlap, and it's configured this way to allow moisture and oils to move into and out of the hair. So the porosity is determined by two factors: how tightly the scales are connected to the surface of the hair and how close those scales overlap. So that being said, hair can be classified as having low, medium, and high porosity. So let's look at each type in a little bit more detail. Low porosity hair, this is what it's essentially going to look like. And what you'll notice here is a round cuticle layer. The individual scales lie flat and they overlap each other. Now, this type of hair is so protected that it can be resistant to chemical processing. So the relaxers don't take, or you have to, have the color in your hair of longer. They tend to be resistant to chemical processing. It may repel water when you attempt to wet it. So it's the type of hair that when you put water on it, it just seems to sit on top. The water seems to sit on top and kind of beat up. That's low porosity hair. And the hair can appear shiny and is considered to be healthy. Now, low porosity hair is more prone to the excessive buildup of protein. And if you use too much protein on low porosity hair, it can feel stiff and straw-like. And I'll also say that if you have low porosity hair and you use a bunch of, oils and leave-in conditioners and gels on your hair, this is the hair texture that tends to have a lot of buildup. It tends to flake a lot, and you tend to get like white residue on the hair if you're using gels and a lot of products. So you have to be careful of that with low porosity hair. It requires products that are definitely rich in moisture, humectants, and emollients. And I'll go into what those are shortly. Low porosity hair that's dry can become difficult to rehydrate. Difficult, but not impossible. And I've got a few keys for you and a few tips for you if you have low porosity hair on how you can actually hydrate your hair. So let's talk about normal porosity hair. Normal porosity hair requires little maintenance. It allows water to pass into the hair, but not too much. Healthy hair with average porosity can absorb water up to a maximum of about 31.1% by weight. This hair has a tendency to hold styles very well. And like I said, it takes relatively little maintenance to deal with normal porosity hair. But that's boring. So let's talk about high porosity hair. And high porosity hair is typically the result of chemical processing, harsh treatments, environmental exposure, and heat. And all of these factors can cause irreversible damage to the cuticle. What you're noticing here on the right-hand side of the screen is a cuticle with its layers lifted and exposed. So the lifted and exposed cuticles compared to the low porosity hair increases the porosity, or the ability for the hair to take in water. The hair, there's gaps and there's holes in the hair shaft, and the hair is more prone to damage from other sources. As the hair becomes more porous, gaps in the surface of the hair allow it to absorb more water, creating stress and weakness throughout the hair strand, causing it to break easily. High porosity hair tends to absorb a higher amount of water compared to normal porosity hair. So if normal porosity hair was able to absorb about 31.1%, high porosity hair can absorb about 55%. And so the more water your hair absorbs, the more it's prone to breakage and damage. So let's end moisture. Hair exists in a variety of textures. And when thinking of hair texture, there are three main aspects that you want to consider. You want to consider curl pattern, you want to consider strand thickness, and you want to consider density. But there are other factors to consider as well. And typically during my natural hair consultations with clients, I usually use a combination of several hair and texture typing systems in order to get a really comprehensive assessment of textured hair. Now, I know that some people have a disdain for hair typing and texture typing. I was on a Facebook group today, and the discussion went to hair and texture typing, and people were saying that it's BS, that there's no need for it, for, you know, the type 2 to like 3, type 4, etc. And I passionately disagree. I believe that hair texture typing can be very similar to skin typing in that you make an assessment based on certain characteristics of your hair, and from that assessment, you can determine how to take care of your hair and what products are best for your hair. So when it comes to hair typing, I believe in it in that respect. I believe that everyone has characteristics, unique characteristics for the hair, but within natural hair, there are groups of characteristics that we can use to make generalizations about hair type. And so I think a lot of the times the discussion with hair and texture typing goes into what one hair type is better than the next. And I don't see it as that. I don't use it as that. I use it to make a proper assessment so that when a client comes to me for a hair consultation, I can let them know what types of products to use, what type of regimen to use to bring out the best in their hair. And so typically what I do is I use a few different systems. I use the naturally curly texture typing system, which I really like. I use the LOIS, that's the LOIS, African American Natural Texture Typing System. The Andre Walker curl typing system, which is what a lot of these systems were based off of in the first place. And another one that the trade uses, that professional stylists use, which is called the Global Texture Typing System. Now, while this is not a detailed discussion of hair typing, there's definite value in understanding your hair type to ensure you're able to evaluate its characteristics and determine what products are best to be used on your hair. So this amalgamated system takes into account the following. Now, I'm just going to go over this really quickly. Texture and strand thickness. The wave pattern when wet, the wave pattern when dry. So what does your hair look like when it's dry? What does your hair look like when it's wet? Curl thickness, how fat or how thick are your curls? Something called ellipticity. And the more elliptical your hair is, your hair follicle is, the more prone to damage it is. And this basically has to do with the follicle shape. Stylability and manageability. So, you know, how stylable is it? How manageable is it? Body, how much volume your hair has. The strength and elasticity. The tendency for the hair to frizz, shine versus sheen, moisture content, scalp and hair dryness or oiliness, porosity and surface smoothness. So as you can see, when I'm talking about hair texture typing or curl typing, I'm going beyond just you're a 2, you're a 3, you're a 4, A, B, C, etc. What I'm honing in on is what are the characteristics of your hair? What are the characteristics of type 2 hair types? What are the characteristics of type 3, type 4, etc.? And because we can go a little bit deeper and talk about texture and strand thickness, etc., we're able to make a better assessment of the hair type and texture and what products will be best used for your hair and how you can care for it at home. So this is my approach when it comes to hair and texture typing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a few generalizations. These images are from naturallycurly.com. You can go there and take a look. And you've got in front of you type 2A on the left, in the middle is type 2B, and on the right is type 2C. So the characteristics of type 2A and B hair is that it tends to be fine or thin. So the strands tend to be fine, or they tend to be thin. For type 2B, the strands tend to be medium thickness. You've got more of an S shape or wavy pattern when the hair is dry. For type 2A and B hair, the hair tends to look more straight when it's wet. I'm going to just talk about moisture. When it comes to the moisture content of type 2 hair, it tends to be medium moisture. So not too dry and not too moisturized, just medium. It's okay, which is fine. The scalp tends to be the scalp tends to be normal, and the porosity tends to be low, okay? The porosity of type 2 hair tends to be low. Type 2C characteristics, when we get into type 2C, we're looking at a thicker hair strand. Remember, type 2A and B tends to be fine generally. And when it comes to porosity, it's still low. The moisture content is medium, so type 2 hair typically doesn't have an issue with moisturizing hair or the hair retaining moisture. And the porosity tends to be low. Now let's get into the curlier hair types and curl patterns, the type 3. So when it comes to type 3A hair, the texture or the strand thickness tends to be thin or fine. But when it comes to the moisture content, now we're getting into low moisture. So around type 3, if you have type 3 hair, the moisture content in your hair is inherently low. The scalp moisture tends to be normal, but now we're getting into higher porosity hair. Okay, so moisture content low, porosity tends to be high in type 3 hair. That's kind of the takeaway message I want from this. Now we're getting into the type 4, the really kinky, curly, coily hair. Now on your left, you've got 4A, 4B in the middle, and on the right, 4C. 4A tends to have more of a definite S-shaped pattern to the hair. Type B and C tends to be very difficult to distinguish between the two, but the curl pattern is more of a Z shape, okay? So the hair texture can be fine in type 4A hair. The curl pattern tends to be more coiled than necessarily curly when it's wet, but when it's dry, it tends to loosen out into a little bit of a S-shaped curl. Now, high tendency to frizz in type 4 hair, the shine is low, the moisture content tends to be very low. So remember with type 3 hair, the moisture content was low. Now, as you get into your type 4 hair, very low moisture content. The scalp tends to be drier as well, and the porosity tends to be high. The same with type B and C hair, high tendency to frizz, very low moisture content, high porosity, and the scalp tends to be dry. So I guess my question is, if you don't know about hair and texture typing, and this is just the basics. I mean, hair and texture typing is a webinar all in and of itself because there's so much detail. But just from the information I gave you, do you think that you could use the same types of products on type 3 hair to moisturize the hair that you could on type 4 hair? Probably not, because the moisture levels inherently in the hair are different. So now we kind of need to go and pull out all the stops when it comes to moisturizing 4A hair versus type 3 hair. So there's a lot of value with understanding your hair type and texture when it comes more specifically to moisturizing the hair and scalp. Also, when it comes to defining curls and everything, but that's not really what this is all about today. We're talking more about moisturizing the hair. So now let's discuss the issue of products seeming to not work anymore in the wintertime. Now, okay, so be honest. How many of you are guilty of this? Using 50 million products with one goal in mind, and that is to help your hair retain as much moisture as possible. So what do we have here in this picture? We've got some apple cider vinegar, we've got olive oil, we've got a spray bottle, we've got applesauce, we've got ranch, we've got the Bible. Yes, sometimes on wash day, you do need to say a little prayer because that process is so long and tedious because of your hair type, texture, and maybe the length of your hair. So what are some products that are typically used by most naturals? Well, shampoo, sometimes. Most people might not use shampoo just because they follow a no-poo regimen, or they do more co-washing or conditioner washing. But they'll definitely have their conditioner. They might have 10 types of conditioners, including a leave-in conditioner. Oils, and more oils. The cabinet is filled with oils. Some styling products and maybe their own DIY or do-it-yourself concoctions, right? These are the products that are typically used by most naturals. I remember being on taking a look at a blog one time, and someone was asking the question about a hair care regimen, and the answer that was given was a regimen that, my gosh, you need your Bible to do this regimen, because it was about 100 products. And this woman that answered, she mixed up her products. So those products were not the products that she used every single week. She used different products each week. And to me, my question was why? Why are you using so many products? And it typically is because one product doesn't seem to do what it needs to do. So one product typically doesn't seem to moisturize the hair like it should. Or it could be that you're not using the product correctly, or the product has a misleading label, meaning it says it moisturizes, but really it seals, or it moisturizes, but really it doesn't, based on the ingredients. So these are the two reasons that products don't really seem to work anymore, or work in general. It's that there's the inability for the product to help retain moisture, and now you have to use 10 different products together and cocktail them, or you're not using them correctly, or you don't have a proper regimen. So let's see if we can help to kind of get past that. When it comes to moisturizing the hair in any season, winter, spring, summer, fall, it doesn't really matter. There are two main principles that I really need you to remember. The first one is that you're trying to get your hair to hold on to existing water. Remember, water is important for the cortex of the hair, okay? It needs it. So you're trying to get your hair to hold on to its existing water. And the second principle is you're trying to slow the loss of water from the hair to the environment. Two principles. If you remember nothing else from this webinar, just remember, you're trying to get your hair to hold on to existing water, and then you're trying to slow the loss of water from the hair into the environment. So how do we accomplish this? Well, in any environment, in order for your hair to remain hydrated, a combination of products with various ingredients should be used. And the products that you really want to include are a deep conditioner, a moisturizer, and an oil. Those, to me, are your three must-have products. One thing that I believe in, this is my philosophy when it comes to a lot of things, is to start with less. Start with the basics. There are a lot of sophisticated techniques and regimens out there, like, apple cider vinegar rinses and baking soda washes and cleansing your hair with clay and all this other stuff. Those things might be fine, but you have to understand the basics of natural hair care first before you go introducing a lot of these sophisticated products and regimens. So this is just my opinion, and you can feel free to definitely disagree with me if you'd like. I believe that your three core products or types of products for natural hair should be a deep conditioner, especially when it comes to hydration, okay? A deep conditioner, a moisturizer, and oil if necessary. And I'll go on to explain why I believe this. The ingredients that are necessary, so those were the products. The ingredients that are necessary for hydration are water or some variation of water. So it could be aloe vera juice, it could be herbal infusion of, it could be, a floral water, but water needs to be there, okay? Because water is essential for moisture. You need humectants, and we'll talk about what humectants are. You need hydrolyzed proteins, and you need oils. Now, the aloe vera juice, the humectants, and the hydrolyzed proteins help the hair hold on to existing water. The oils, depending on the type of oil that's used, reduce the loss of water from the surface of the hair. So remember I said that there's two principles you need to remember when it comes to hydration. You want your hair to hold on to existing water, and you want to slow down that loss of water to the atmosphere. So if there's one product that's essential for reducing dryness and for optimal moisture, it's a moisturizer. So before discussing moisturizers, let's look at the differences between rinse-out conditioners, leave-in conditioners, and moisturizers. A moisturizer, a leave-in, and a rinse-out conditioner may be the same product if the product is a creamy consistency. And it's the opinion of some that moisturizers and leave-ins are lighter versions of rinse-out conditioners. However, in my opinion, a moisturizer should go a step further. Now, conditioners typically contain ingredients, and these ingredients are called surfactants, that attach onto the surface of the hair. They don't get absorbed into the hair. These conditioning ingredients just sit on the surface of the hair, on the cuticle. And the purpose of conditioning is, the absorption, or the sitting on top of the hair is the purpose of the conditioning. And it confers the following benefits. It helps to repair the hair. It helps to smooth the cuticle. It helps to reduce tangling, to ease wet combing, so your hair is easier to comb when it's wet, and softens the hair. So that is the purpose of conditioning agents sitting on top of the hair. Now, while conditioning ingredients mostly work on the outside of the hair, some ingredients in a really good, well-formulated conditioner can actually penetrate into the hair. And the more damaged your hair is, the more those substances can actually penetrate into the hair. Conditioners can contain a wide range of ingredients, including water, which when it comes to moisture, it needs to remain outside of the hair shaft to create what's called a humidity barrier. Okay, so that water needs to remain outside to create a barrier for humidity. It can contain surfactants or the conditioning ingredients. And what these ingredients do is they sit on the surface of the hair and they smooth and they soften the cuticle. It can contain hair softeners, which again stay on the surface of the hair and leave the hair soft and manageable. It contains humectants, and these create a humidity barrier to keep the hair moisturized. The conditioner can contain oils and butters. Some oils can penetrate, some oils can just sit on top of the hair. It can contain silicones, mineral oil, and hydrolyzed proteins. And given the important function of conditioners and the important role they play in hydrating the hair, good moisturizers should do the same thing that conditioners do with a few tweaks, especially in the wintertime. So what a good moisturizer will do is it will nourish the hair deeply within the hair shaft. And I describe the feeling of moisturizing deeply within the hair shaft as the hair feeling really soft and moisturized, but not feeling oily. Okay, it's not brittle, it's soft. You can feel that moisture, but there's not really an oily feel to the hair. So you want it to be moisturized within the cortex. Water-based products are necessary. Anything without water, such as 100% oil-based products, will not moisturize the hair. And this is because oils and waxes do not moisturize. A proper moisturizing product will contain conditioning and softening ingredients, humectants to draw water into the hair, and what are called occlusive ingredients, which will be your oils and your butters to keep the moisture there. Now, the first 5 ingredients are what you need to know from many products to determine how effective they'll be. So when it comes to moisturizers, looking at the label is very important. So, excuse me, what are the 5 key ingredients that should be in an effective moisturizer? Well, the reason we focus on the first 5 is because the first 5 ingredients of any product are the main ingredients that will have an effect on the hair, with an exception of your hydrolyzed proteins and your panthenol, because you don't need those ingredients in a high concentration in order to be effective in a product. So those ingredients will tend to be lower down on the ingredient list near the fragrance and the preservative. So the first ingredient you want is water. So in order to moisturize your hair, you need water or some similar ingredient like aloe vera juice or some type of floral water, for example. Humectants attract water and will increase the moisture level of the hair. You want penetrating oils, and these oils are able to kind of fit underneath the cuticle and go into the cortex to provide suppleness and manageability to the hair. And the top 3 oils are coconut oil, avocado, and olive oil. Sealants are oils that slow down the water loss. So sealants are ideal for helping the hair retain moisture, and examples include jojoba oil and castor oil. And as a general note, when it comes to oils, the thicker the oil coating on the hair, the less likely water is able to evaporate from the hair. Okay, so a light film will allow the hair to take up more water from the environment, or will allow the evaporation of water to be a lot faster. So for your hair, you're going to need to try different oils to see which ones will work best, because not everyone's hair is the same. However, coconut oil is typically not good as a sealant, okay, because it gets absorbed into the hair. And we'll talk about coconut oil shortly. So another ingredient, which is the key ingredient, are humectants. And humectants are your best friend or your worst enemy. And you've heard me mention this word a few times. So let's get into what humectants are. Humectants are used in hair and skincare products to promote moisture retention. They have the ability to attract water from the atmosphere, and many different molecules have the ability to be effective humectants. Examples include glycerin, sodium PCA, agave nectar, which is in kinky, curling custard, and honey is another humectant. Humectants can be a curly girl's best friend or worst enemy. In some natural hair circles, there's some confusion about these molecules, and some are concerned that humectants make their hair hard, and others are concerned about the stickiness. And then others are still not sure what to make of them and avoid humectants at all costs. So what's the real scoop on humectants? Well, the answer is it depends. And it depends on a number of things, and the most important is the climate, okay? So while the topic of climate can be a little bit complicated, for the sake of hair care and the use of humectants, there are 2 main weather conditions: low humidity and high humidity. Guess where we're in right now? For most of us in North America and us in Canada, we are in the low humidity environment. So focusing on low humidity conditions, such as the cold, dry winter air, if you use a product that contains a lot of humectants, so if the humectants are in the top 5, so if you see glycerin in your top 5 ingredient list, what tends to happen is there's not a lot of water in the air for the humectants to attract to the surface of your hair. And so what happens is the humectants in your products may contribute to water leaving the hair into the air. So what tends to happen in this situation is your hair is not going to be ultra moisturized at all. It can typically be dry and your hair can feel icky. I'm sorry. I can't find another word for that. Dry hair, it feels a little bit crunchy. Not cool. However, I will say this. If you do use humectants in the wintertime, because I use them and I love them, here's how you're going to use them. I'm going to make the following recommendations just because if you use humectants by themselves, you're going to get brittle hair. You can use products with humectants that are lower down on the ingredient label, or you can use products that contain humectants that don't have a high ability to bind water. Now, glycerin has a pretty high ability to bind water. Okay, that's why it's used in a lot of your Jerry Curl products because it's so good at doing what it does. So if you're using products that don't have high have ingredients with high humectants in it, these ingredients should not appear high on the label. Glycerin, sodium PCA, sodium lactate is another one, and propylene glycol. So you can probably add agave nectar and honey to that list. I've tried using honey in the past, and I really don't like the way honey makes my hair feel in any type of environment. It makes my hair crispy. So if you're doing your kind of like DIY or do-it-yourself concoctions and you're adding honey and you're wondering why your hair is crispy, it could be due to the honey. I personally don't like it, but some other naturals love it. Now, this is really crucial because, like I said, I use glycerin in the wintertime in the top 5 of my products ingredients, and I have no issues. So if you're going to use products that contain humectants high in the list and that have a high ability to bind water, then you need to use a moisturizer with emollients underneath. So in this type of environment, which is the cold, dry winter air, humectants work best with oils, with sealant oils, to minimize the amount of water that's lost. So you can pair your glycerin or your glycerin-containing products with oils and butters and leave-in conditioners, quote unquote, that have a lot of moisturizers in them. And you'll find that your hair will be able to retain moisture a lot better, as there will be minimal loss of water to the environment. Now, I want you to keep in mind that these are just guidelines on what types of products you should use in certain environments. Ultimately, what you're going to have to do is try different products. However, understanding the why you're actually using them, you can assess whether or not your hair responds favorably. Just because the weather is dry and cold doesn't mean you cannot use glycerin in your hair if you use a leave-in conditioner or moisturizer underneath. Or maybe it does mean that. You've got to do what works for you. Okay, but what I will say is if you're going to use glycerin, and I wouldn't stay away from it, because glycerin and humectants have huge benefits, you need to use a leave-in conditioner, something that's going to soften the hair and provide some oils to the hair with the glycerin. So even though the winter weather has its own set of challenges, there are several modifications you can make to your hair care regimen to minimize dryness and retain moisture. So everything begins on a wash day, which I consider to be day 1. So get ready for some quality time with yourself and your hair, because day 1 is the only time in any regimen I will give on any webinar or in any consultation where you're going to spend a lot of time. You need to spend the time on day 1 so that it sets the stage for maintaining your hair the rest of the week. It's important for you to spend time on wash day to do essential steps for your hair to retain as much moisture as possible, because essentially that's what you want your hair to do. You want your hair to retain moisture. Retaining moisture means it's more manageable, it's softer, less breakage. So there are 4 essential steps that you want to consider. The first one is a pre-shampoo. The second one is shampoo. The third one is deep condition. And the 4th is to moisturize and seal. These steps will make up the core of your regimen, and you can include any additional ones if you'd like, but these are the core steps. So let's get into what they are. So step 1, if you have time, is your coconut oil pre-shampoo treatment. Now, as a pre-shampoo treatment or conditioner, coconut oil coats the hair, and what it does is it blocks the entry of water into the hair. So remember that discussion we had earlier about high porosity hair and how it allows in a ton of water? That is not good. It so happens that it reduces the elasticity of the hair and increases breakage, which is what you do not want. So how coconut oil works is that a small amount of coconut oil is absorbed into the hair during washing when the hair fiber swells. Coconut oil on the hair reduces the tendency of the cuticle to swell and to chip, and it reduces protein loss, which is a good thing. Coconut oil softens the hair. It provides the hair with a lot of flexibility and strength, and it increases keratin retention, or the retention of protein within the hair. So how do you do it? Well, let's talk about the coconut oil pre-wash or pre-poo. You're going to apply coconut oil to dry, detangled hair in sections. Here's a little bit of a tip. For oils that are able to be absorbed into the hair, you want to put it on dry hair. You want to put those oils on dry hair. If you put oils that you want to be absorbed into the cortex of the hair on damp hair, the oils will be repelled by water because oil and water don't mix. So the coconut oil, the purpose of that is for it to be absorbed into the cortex of the hair to minimize the swelling of the hair shaft. So in order to get it to do this effectively, you put it on dry, detangled hair in sections. You want to think relaxer application when applying the oil, and make sure that the hair is saturated with the oil. Then what you're going to do is you're going to place a plastic cap over the hair and allow the oil to penetrate into the hair shaft for at least 30 minutes. You can use heat in the form of a processing cap or heat cap or damp towel, or tie your or use a steamer as well. But make sure when you're using that steamer, you use it with the plastic cap on your hair. Then you're going to shampoo and condition as usual. So you rinse the coconut oil from the hair, then you shampoo and condition as usual. And what you should expect from a coconut oil pre-shampoo treatment is the ability of the increased ability of your hair to maintain moisture, more shine, less breakage. Okay, those are the three main things that you will expect from a coconut oil pre-shampoo treatment. A lot of people ask me, can you use different oils? Yes, you can use different oils for a hot oil treatment, but when it comes to allowing the coconut oil to prevent the loss of protein from the hair, this is a specific thing to coconut oil because of the fatty acid makeup of the coconut oil. So please use coconut oil. You don't necessarily need extra virgin coconut oil. You can use the what's called RBD, or refined bleach deodorized coconut oil, for this purpose. Okay, so that's your coconut oil. Step 2 is your shampoo. And yes, I said shampoo, and I'll get into why. Many naturals don't include shampoo in their regimen and prefer to condition or wash their hair, which is completely fine. However, when it comes to this type of protocol for setting your hair up for retaining moisture during the wintertime, I'm going to recommend that you do shampoo your hair, and here's why. It has to do with your conditioner step, which is next. Conditioning is probably the most important step in your regimen, but it's often neglected, or it's hurried or rushed. Whenever I do a poll, whenever I'm at hair parties, I ask people, how much time do you spend on conditioning your hair? Most people tell me about 5 minutes, okay? Not good, no good at all. In my opinion, deep conditioning is the first step to maintaining the moisture level in your hair. It also helps soften the hair and strengthen it. And attention needs to be given to this step in order for the conditioner to have a beneficial effect on the hair. So deep conditioner is a webinar in and of itself, but if you haven't been deep conditioning, you definitely need to start. A well-formulated deep conditioner will soften the hair and add elasticity. So when I talk about elasticity, I'm talking about the hair's ability to be stretched quite a bit before it actually breaks. That is something that you want, because most people twist their hair, they comb it, they do all sorts of things to it that require it to be stretched, and you want it to be stretched quite a bit before it actually snaps off and break. So a deep conditioner will contain oils and ingredients that not only coat the hair, but actually penetrate into the hair. It will have many of the same ingredients as a moisturizer, but might have protein and other repairing agents in the hair. After your hair is deep conditioned, it needs to feel soft and moisturized. And if possible, you should deep condition every time you cleanse your hair, whether you shampoo your hair or you co-wash. Now, the science suggests that deep conditioners work best on freshly shampooed hair, and here's why. It has to do with the chemistry of shampoos and conditioners. Shampoos contain surfactants, so do conditioners, and these surfactants are classified on their charge. So you can have a negative, positive, neutral charge, or both. In general, surfactants that are positively charged are used in conditioners. Now, they're attracted to the negative charge of the hair. The hair has a relative negative charge. So these positively charged molecules in conditioners are attracted to the negative charge on the hair. And because of this, they sit on top of the hair, and this is where the conditioners can really do their work of softening the hair. Shampoos may contain negatively charged, positive, and both negative and positive charged surfactants. When it comes to conditioning, it's best to use a shampoo with a negative charge, because what this does is it enhances the negative charge on the hair, making the conditioner just basically connect or sit on the hair a lot better. So basically what I'm saying is when you use a shampoo first, before you condition your hair, it allows the conditioning agents to sit or to be attracted to the hair a lot more, to soften, seal the cuticle, and increase elasticity a lot better than if you don't use a shampoo on the hair. So how do you want to properly deep condition your hair? Well, again, you want to think relaxer application. So you saturate your hair with a conditioner. While deep conditioners contain ingredients that sit on top of the hair, good ones are going to be formulated with ingredients that also penetrate into the cortex. So what are you looking for with your deep conditioner? You're looking for deep conditioners that contain water, obviously, hydrolyzed proteins, my favorite oil, which is coconut oil, because there's so much research on it and it does so much great stuff for the hair. But you also use other butters like cocoa butter, you can use shea butter. Any type of oil or butter is great to have in a deep conditioner. Something called citramonium bromide, which is great, that absorbs into the hair, and panthenol absorbs into the hair. You want to leave the conditioner on for 30 minutes and add heat. And the specific temperature for these ingredients that are able to penetrate into the hair is about 35 degrees Celsius, which corresponds to what you would get if you applied a conditioner on the hair and covered your head with a shower cap. So why do you leave it on for 30 minutes? Well, this seems to be the magic number for most ingredients that are able to penetrate to actually do so. Some might take a little bit longer. So using heat and leaving the conditioner on for a long period of time, so about 20 to 30 minutes, can increase the amount of conditioner that's deposited onto the surface of the hair, as well as those ingredients that are able to penetrate into the hair. So what that means for you is soft, conditioned hair with ingredients that are able to actually penetrate into the cortex of the hair, doing that to confer their benefits. Okay. Having a little bit of technical difficulties here, folks. There's no webinar that would be great without it. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so the step number 4 is moisturize and seal. So after the conditioner is rinsed from the hair and rinsed well, it's time to apply the moisturizer. So what you see here is me applying a moisturizer to my daughter's hair. So this is what I'm talking about when I mean relaxer application. Okay, so I'm sectioning and I'm applying from the base of the hair all the way to the ends, and I'm detangling her hair at the same time. And then what I'm going to do when I've applied to that specific section is I'm just going to smooth the moisturizer throughout the entire hair, just to make sure that it is proper. When it comes to applying a moisturizer, I tend to go by feel. So I can't tell you how much to apply. I go by feel. The last step is styling. Oh, what I want to say is when it goes back to moisturizing, for thicker hair textures and high density hair, it's best to use a moisturizer that is a thicker consistency. So think a cream, and one that contains a high amount of oils and butters, as well as conditioning agents to soften the hair. When it comes to fine hair strands, lighter moisturizers are ideal. So think lotions. Right? These are ideal. However, some women with fine hair might opt for thicker moisturizers in the cold weather. In the winter, I've found that applying a moisturizer to towel blotted hair in sections is ideal. So the hair should not be dry, nor should it be dripping wet. You need to have a layer of water there for the moisturizer to go onto in order for the hair to be properly hydrated. I've tried it a number of different ways, and usually for me, I apply moisturizer on close to damp hair. In the wintertime, no good. You need to have the moisture or the water in the hair first, then you apply the moisturizer, which would typically have some oils to seal in that moisture, and then I apply my styling product on top, and I get the best results from that type of method. Okay, next are styling options, and how you decide to wear your hair in the winter determines the type of product that you're going to use. If you're not interested in a lot of definition and like bigger, fuller looks to your style, then your styling product and your moisturizer can be the same product. However, if you're looking for definition, then a product with hold is necessary, and that means you'll need to use a gel or some type of cream gel. And if you're using a gel, the best results in the wintertime is to use a moisturizer or a leave-in conditioner, a beefed up leave-in conditioner underneath the gel. And when I say beefed up leave-in conditioner, if your leave-in conditioner does not have oils or butters in the top 5 to 7 ingredients, then you need to apply some. Okay, you need to use it. If it doesn't have any humectants like glycerin is always my favorite, then you need to apply. You can get a spray bottle with glycerin, 4 parts glycerin, 4 parts water, sorry, 1 part glycerin, and apply that before you add your leave-in conditioner, and then you apply your butter on top. So that's how you're going to layer those products. So careful thought needs to go into the styles you choose. Many naturals like to rock a wash and go. However, this style might not be ideal for the cold weather if you're going out into the cold soaking wet. And, you know, that might seem like it's ridiculous, but I've seen people doing that. What you're going to get is you're going to get a frozen wash and go. Trust me on that one. So wash and go might not be ideal unless you're able to kind of dry your hair inside and then, you know, wear it during the week. The other thing to consider is if you wear your hair in an afro, there's nothing wrong with that, but just keep in mind that the more surface area that's exposed to the colder weather, the colder air, the more surface area that's prone to evaporation of moisture from it. Okay, so think afro, more surface area, more ability for the hair to lose moisture. So that's another thing to consider. So what I've got here is, you know, that's me in the top left-hand corner before I cut my hair. So that's a twist out. You've got below that is a wash and go. And then above that, that third image is a flat twist out. And then you've got Bantu knot out. So you've got so many different styling options for you. My preference has always been a twist out. I've done flat twist a few times. I can't twist properly or flat twist properly, so I just don't opt for that. For those, I love the look, but in terms of maintenance, I found that I would need to retwist every night, reflat twist every night, and that just was not good for me. But the style is great. So how you choose to wear your hair, it's completely up to you. But just take those things into consideration. The nighttime routine will determine how moisturized your hair stays the next day. Nighttime is for replenishing and protecting the hair. So what you're going to do at nighttime is, excuse me, if you need to, apply more water and moisturizer if needed. Then you're going to retwist, rebraid, whatever your hair to kind of keep it all nice for the evening. I tend to retwist my hair, or I can get away with wearing my hair, sleeping on a satin pillowcase without any twisting for about 3 days before I might have to retwist my hair. And this is just due to the styling product that I use. There's a ton of holes. So I don't need to do a lot of the twisting and that kind of stuff at nighttime. Also, the moisturizer that I use really helps my hair retain moisture for 3 and 4 days. So I don't have to reapply the moisturizer. But if you do, and if you want to, reapply a little bit more, but first you want to mist your hair with some water. So there needs to be that water layer, and then you apply your moisturizer, and then you retwist your hair. Moisturized morning hair will allow your hair to retain moisture more effectively during the day. I find that a lot of people, they moisturize during the daytime. I will challenge you to switch that to nighttime moisturizing to allow your hair to retain more moisture during the daytime. If you're really concerned with dryness and want to ensure your hair is very well hydrated, you can use a humidifier. This relatively inexpensive appliance can increase moisture in the room or your entire house, and it can be used daily to improve the moisture in your hair. You can use it day or night. So remember, it's all about the environment. So if you have a dry environment, yeah, there's going to be some water loss from the hair. You want to put moisture back in the hair, and one way to do that is to create an environment that's very moisturized so that by diffusion, water can go back into the hair. And it's not only important to keep your hair protected at night when you sleep, but when going outside and your hair is exposed to the cold air. So wearing a hood or hat is necessary to protect your hair from the harsh weather. You can purchase a satin-lined hat, or you can line your favorite hat yourself with a satin bonnet. You want to keep your hair's exposure to the elements as minimal as possible. So when it's really cold, I do not go outside without a hat or hood on. Okay, now let's put all this together with a sample 1-week hair care regimen. So once wash day is over, the rest of the week is dedicated to maintaining proper moisture levels in the hair. And if you need to reapply your moisturizer every day, it's my opinion that it's probably not a good moisturizer, or there's something with the application of it or your regimen. Your hair, honestly, should be able to retain moisture for days without the need to reapply anything. And I also find that, like I said, re-moisturizing at night gets better results than during the day. So day 1 is wash day. So you follow the principles of your pre-shampoo treatment, your shampoo, your deep condition, and your moisturizing style. Then day 2, what you're going to do in the morning is you're going to style as usual, but in the evening is where you're going to mist your hair with water or a hydrating spray. And your hydrating spray, if you want to do it yourself, is your glycerin water concoction. Okay, 4 parts water, 1 part glycerin. Love it. It works like a charm. And then you're going to add a little bit of moisturizer to your hair if necessary. And then you're going to retwist, rebraid, whatever it is that you do. And you're going to sleep with a plastic cap on your hair and a satin pillowcase or a satin cap. Now, the reason you want to sleep with a plastic cap on your hair is because the plastic cap creates a greenhouse effect. So essentially what that is a humid environment around the hair that causes the hair to become saturated with water and to remain moisturized. So now you have a better understanding of the characteristics of winter weather and the essentials of moisturizing the hair. Following the tips and regimen will ensure that your hair is moisturized throughout the colder months, and you'll be able to rock healthy hair in the warmer months. Now, that was about an hour and a bit, everyone. There's a lot of material that I went through. I know I just touched on a few topics. And as I said before, there are some topics that are deserving of a webinar in and of itself. So I know that was quick. Do any of you have any questions? I'm just going to get out of my screen share and switch back over to seeing everybody. Okay, so I have lots of questions. Okay, I'm hoping I'll be able to get to all of them. So someone asked, steps to use the butter with the jelly. Do you layer it on or mix the hair butter and jelly in my hand and apply it all together? And how wet should the hair be before applying the product? So when I use a moisturizer or the hair butter, what I'm going to do is I make sure that my hair is not just dripping wet, it's towel blotted, and I apply it to my hair. Now my hair is short enough where I can just do this and just apply it. Okay, I can do that. But I just make sure it's saturated. Some of you, if your hair is longer, you might have to section your hair and apply. Section and apply, just like I showed you in the video. You might have to do that. And while my hair is damp, still damp with the butter, that's when I go and apply my gel. I have found that if my hair is not damp and I apply the butter or the gel, any type of styling agent, it doesn't result in my hair being as moisturized as it should be. So I kind of do it right away. Right? Hopefully that question about how wet the hair should be. So just take a towel, blot your hair, remove excess water from the hair, and then apply the products. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm just going through some of these questions here. How do you actually know the porosity of the hair other than the water test? I mean, that's a good question. And the water test is not exactly accurate either, just because your hair is going to take up water anyway. It will eventually take up water. So the water test is that test that you take a strand of your hair, you put it in some water, and if it sinks to the bottom, it's high porosity. If it floats on top, it's lower porosity. Eventually, all hair will sink to the bottom. So it's a pretty unscientific test. And one of the ways, I think pretty much the only way you can tell the porosity of your hair really is in a laboratory setting with a specific machine. And I can't remember the name of it. So if you don't mind, just send me an email, Susan@earthtonesnaturals.com, and I will get the answer for you, and I will get the name of that piece of equipment for you, but that's the only way you can really honestly tell the porosity of your hair. So the water test is a little bit deceptive, and I know a lot of people use it, but it's flawed in that all hair will eventually take up water. Sorry, I'm just scrolling here for these questions here. What's good for a sealant? That's a very good question. So you can use any natural oil for a sealant. In general, the thicker the oil, the better it's going to be as a sealant. So castor oil is a very good sealant. Olive oil is a great sealant. Olive oil is also great as a humectant. So it's also going to attract water to itself. And mineral oil is also a really good sealant. Now, just bear with me here, because I put this on one of my the forums that I'm on, and instantly it was like attack. So the thing about mineral oil, and again, this is a webinar in and of itself, but I'll just go briefly here. Compared when in a study that was done on mineral oil compared to other oils like coconut oil and some other natural oils, mineral oil was the best sealant. It prevented the uptake of water into the hair and water loss from the hair. And so I know that some people don't want to use mineral oil, but there's nothing wrong with using it if you use it correctly. So you would use mineral oil on damp hair and not dry hair. Because mineral oil is so good at slowing water loss from the hair, if you use mineral oil on dry hair, your hair is just basically going to be dry and crunchy. So what mineral oil used on damp hair, though, is really good at helping to seal in that moisture. So that is a talk and a discussion in and of itself. The use of it just depends on your own natural hair philosophy. There's nothing wrong with using it. It's just a matter of, do you want to use natural oils, or do you mind using a petroleum byproduct that happens to be purified and distilled, by the way. So a lot of people think that mineral oil is so unsafe. And I had one girl go as far as to say that someone got brain cancer from it. Yeah, right. From using mineral oil. I don't think so. But that's what she believes. This is what she wants to convince her otherwise. My whole thing is, when it comes to these products that you should and shouldn't use, I'm always going to present you with the facts, and it's up to you to kind of decide whether you're not going to use them. So mineral oil is a very good sealant as well. Okay. How do I get my hair to shine? Whether I style my hair wet or dry with leave-in conditioners, moisturizers, oils, and gels, my hair ends up looking dull. Are there other causes to dry scalp or buildup apart from low porosity hair? Yeah, with shine, that is something that is inherent in your hair. Now, if you take a look at my hair, you see a little bit of shine to it. I'm going to tell you that my hair normally doesn't have any shine to it without product. And so the product that I use is an Earth Tones Naturals product. It's the Curl Define Curl Enhancing Jelly. This jelly was specifically designed for type 4 hair. When I formulated the gel, I wanted it to do a few things. I wanted to add shine to my hair. I wanted moisture. I wanted definition hold. I wanted 5-day hair, etc. I'm not even lying. But it's product. So for me to get the shine from my hair, I need product. My hair is dull looking. It doesn't mean it's unhealthy. It's just that naturally it's dull. So what I use is I use product to get my hair to enhance, to be shiny. An ingredient that's good for shine is panthenol. Silicones are also good for shine, although I do not use silicones, but some people's hair responds really well to silicones. So though it's a product thing in terms of getting the shine. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm just scrolling up because I'm getting the questions piling in. Whether I style my hair wet or dry, leave-ins, my hair ends up looking dull, and it could be the type of product that you're using. And so if you can send me an email, I'd gladly look into this for you and let me know the product name for you. I can definitely do the research, because it just could be the formulation. Not all products are designed to give shine to the hair. Some moisturizers do, some moisturizers don't, some leave-ins do, some don't. But in general, your styling products should give some shine to the hair if there's a proper shine ingredient in there, other than silicone. Are there other causes to dry scalp or buildup? Yes. If you have eczema, for example, sometimes eczema, which is basically a skin condition, for some people, excuse me, that can manifest on the scalp, and your scalp can be excessively dry in the wintertime. Eczema is usually combined with asthma and allergies. It's called an allergic triad. So some people that have allergies tend to suffer from eczema. So that is also a cause of dry scalp. Excuse me, fungus is also another cause of dry scalp, or if you have type 4 hair, remember, excuse me, in the hair typing classification, I said that type 4 hair tends to have drier scalps than other hair types and textures. Well, your scalp is going to be drier. So there tends to be a loss of water from the scalp. So a great way to kind of prevent that is to just put an oil on your scalp. Coconut oil is great. Avoid using really heavy oils like olive oil on your scalp. They tend to weigh the hair down and they're just too heavy. You want lighter oil. So coconut oil is like, I love it for everything. And also jojoba oil. Jojoba oil is very close in composition to your hair sebum. So it's close to your natural oils. And if jojoba oil is a little bit too pricey for you, because it can get pricey, avocado oil can be very similar in chemical composition to jojoba oil. So those are 3 really great oils that you can kind of mix together and put on your scalp. I wouldn't apply oil to my scalp every day. You shouldn't need to. I would do a lot of my oil application at nighttime, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, and then just massage it into your scalp. And then you can use essential oils like peppermint essential oil. You can use lavender essential oil. The peppermint really helps to stimulate scalp circulation. All right. Bravo. For your pre-poo, does it matter? Yeah, coconut oil should be in the liquid state. I just find that it's just easier to apply to the hair. If you want to or put it between your hands like this, what will tend to happen is it will liquefy, but I just find that if you liquefy it first, it goes on easier. How you can do that is you put it in a double boiler. So what you can do is you can put a pot on the stove. I would rather you do that than put the coconut oil in the microwave. When it comes to microwave and the radiation and stuff like that, that can kind of change the chemical composition of things a little bit too much. So I'd rather you put it on the stove. Put the coconut oil in maybe a stainless steel or glass jar or bowl. You put it in a pot with water, that you warm the oil gently, and then it would liquefy, and then you just apply it to your hair. So it's a great way to do it that way. What's the best way? Sorry. Can you give an example of a moisturizer and shampoo that creates a negative charge? So any shampoo in general, any shampoo, and I'm probably going to get crucified here for saying your sulfate-based shampoos of itself is going to be a hot topic, but just really briefly here, you can use a sulfate-based shampoo if it is coupled with other ingredients that kind of lessen scalp irritation, because one of the issues, among other issues, like for example, causing dryness to the hair is one of them, but it can cause scalp irritation, sodium lauryl sulfate. So what tends to happen with product manufacturers is they couple or combine that sulfate with a less irritating surfactant to basically lower the overall irritant nature of the shampoo, and also to lower the harshness of the shampoo. Okay, so what you can do is you can use a sulfate-based shampoo if it doesn't irritate your scalp. That's maybe a conditioning shampoo for the cleansing process once a month to cleanse, but follow it up with a really good conditioner. So yes, a sulfate-based shampoo can create a negative charge. And any of like ammonium lauryl sulfate, there are so many different surfactants out there. Curl Chemist Kay on naturallycurly.com. She has a great, really detailed article on surfactants if you're interested in the science and you don't get too bored. And then I think she has them broken up with negatively charged and positively charged surfactants. So you can kind of take a look there to take a look at the negatively charged ones. And so when you read your product labels, you can see what ones to look for. Shampoo that creates good moisturizers for 3B hair. So moisturizers for 3B hair, you can do the Earth Tones Naturals products. And guys, I'm gonna do shameless plug here, okay? So bear with me. The coconut moisture milk from Earth Tones Naturals, the hair butter from Earth Tones Naturals are 2 really good moisturizers. Karen's Body Beautiful has a product called I think it's Hair Nectar or something like that, which is a good moisturizer. If you take a look at oh my goodness, I'm drawing a lot of blanks here. Camille Rose has some really good leave-in conditioners. I think she has a new one, like a coconut oil one or something like that. Looks really good as well. Now, I have not tried these myself. I've just heard from other people that they're good. So I'm just telling you what I've heard. Try them. But what you want to do to evaluate it at face value is just take that information that I shared with you about the 5 top ingredients to look for in your moisturizer, compare the ingredients to the actual label of the moisturizer, see if it measures up, and then you can try it. Okay. What's the best way to moisturize hair while transitioning? The water will make the curls go away and give way to the straight ends, right? And so what you'll want to do while transitioning, and it all depends on the style that you're using. When you're transitioning, I'm really in favor on wearing your hair in the style you're trying to get to rather than the style that you're trying to get away from. So what that means is if you're transitioning, I'm really a big fan of wearing your hair in curly or wavier styles versus straight styles. Because what tends to happen with a lot of people who transition, if they're wearing their hair straight, guess what? You're growing out your relaxer and you're straightening your natural hair. So when you cut, you'll find that you might have some heat damage and you have to cut more than you want to. So I would opt for more curlier styles. So what your twist outs, your braid outs, and then what you'll have to do for your ends is just kind of rod the ends to make sure that the ends are curly. But when it comes to moisturizing the hair, what you might have to do, and it sucks, is you might have to apply more moisturizer and retwist, right? So you might have to retwist in the middle of the week when you're moisturizing. However, if you have a really good moisturizer, you might not have to do that, right? So just retwist the hair just like you would if your hair is natural. Re-rod the ends if you need to, or re-curl them or repin them or whatever it is, and your hair will be able to retain moisture. I believe healthy hair starts from the inside. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. The food I eat and the water I drink. With everyone attempting to lose weight, how can you eat healthy and low calorie and still maintain healthy hair? Do you believe in taking vitamins and supplements to assist with hair health and growth? Lori, that's a great question. And I promise you, because there's a lot of research and a lot of opinion and a lot of anecdotal reports about using vitamins and supplements for hair growth. Now, yes, definitely healthy hair starts from the inside out, because when you saw in that first diagram of the hair follicle, what was actually nourishing the follicle was the blood vessels. And basically the blood vessels or the blood carries a lot of your vitamins and your nutrients to nourish that follicle to enhance hair growth. You're right. So it does start from the inside out. And the other thing too is that if you're suffering from any health conditions, like for example, low thyroid function, one of the things that is a hallmark of low thyroid is hair loss, not only on the scalp, but also in the outer third of the eyebrow. Okay, so if you have any hair loss right out there, and other issues like, constipation, weight gain, you feel sluggish, you feel tired all the time, then it could be a sign of low thyroid function. So we definitely know that health conditions and hormones have a huge effect on hair health and hair growth. Now, when it comes to calorie, this is another, you need to reduce your calories for weight loss. However, if you go on crash diets, what tends to happen is hair loss. Because if you end up eating too little calories, you do an extreme deficit, one of your non-vital tissues is the hair. And so what can tend to happen is nutrients are diverted from the scalp to the rest of the body where it needs it, because your body's so desperate for nutrients and calories because you're eating, 500 calories a day, for example, that you'll tend to experience hair loss. And also you're not getting enough nutrients to the hair follicle to maintain it. So that's the short answer. And I promise you, I will do a webinar on it. I do believe in taking vitamins and minerals to assist in hair health. With hair growth, that's another story, because research shows that you can do nothing to enhance your hair's growth potential. And what I mean by that is your hair growth phases are genetically determined, sorry. So you can do nothing to quicken, promise I will webinar, so stay tuned for that, but you can do nothing to enhance that growth phase. It's genetically determined. This is why some people, it seems that their hair, they just cut their hair and all of a sudden it grows long in 2 months. It's because of their genetics. It's because of their genetics. I believe, and this is my own personal belief, that when you give yourself supplements, and it's just like when you're tired, for example, and you have low iron, you have a deficiency. The deficiency is the iron. So when you give your body the nutrient it's lacking, you accomplish your potential. So you're not tired anymore. You're operating at your peak potential or peak energy. I believe it's the same thing when it comes to taking supplements for hair growth. There is no scientific research that shows that supplements enhance hair growth unless you're deficient in specific supplements. However, reports from different people that are taking supplements for hair growth will report that, my hair grew 10 inches in 2 months. Are they lying? I don't think so. I think what's happening is that once you give your body the nutrients that it needs, what tends to happen is the hair is experiencing the growth potential it would have experienced anyway based on their genetics, if that makes any sense. So that's honestly what I think is going on there. I think that you definitely need nutrients for proper hair growth, but I don't think that there's anything that you can do to speed that up. If your genetic potential is that your hair only grows an inch a month, and you're experiencing half an inch a month, it could be, yes, you're deficient in nutrients, that you need to definitely take a supplement to enhance your genetic potential, but there's nothing that's going to speed your hair growth to 2 inches a month if your genes say that your hair is only going to grow 1 inch a month. And that's the reality of the situation. So that's my take there. Another question, my hair feels great and manageable after wash and condition, then it dries and it feels crunchy and dry. Yes, it does. And it has to do with the fact that as your hair dries, you've got the evaporation of water from the hair to the atmosphere. So now what you need to do, and this is Irene, what you need to do is you need to catch your hair in its wet state to basically make sure that water is locked in there. So if you need to use a leave-in conditioner moisturizer, but you need to use a leave-in, then use the leave-in conditioner. But instantly when the hair is damp, after the leave-in conditioner, add your oils on top. And what will happen is your hair will retain that softness. So that's exactly what the diffusion process is. You want to catch the hair when it's damp or wet, add that leave-in conditioner on top or your moisturizer when it's damp or wet, and then as the hair dries, it'll retain that softness. So that's what happens. Remember, you want to allow your hair to retain as much moisture as possible. You want to slow the evaporation of water. Those are the two things you're trying to achieve. Thank you, Leah. Very informative. What ingredients does a type 4 person stay away from? I don't know. And the only reason I say that is because it depends on your hair. I tend to not stay away from any ingredient just because my philosophy, in addition to loving your natural hair, is experience the freedom of having natural hair. So I find that when it comes to absolute do's and don'ts, it kind of takes away that freedom. And that's just philosophical. The next part of that is every hair is different. So if you try, for example, mineral oil, and you don't have any philosophical issues against using it, and you try it and it doesn't work for you, then don't use it. If you try glycerin and it doesn't work for you, then don't use it. If you try coconut oil and in the proper way and it doesn't work for you, then you don't use it. So there's no real ingredient that I would say that you should stay away from, more so than there's ingredients that you should kind of gravitate towards. And again, these questions are great. I love them. I will probably answer more of them in more detail on the Q&A, or just have webinars on those specific topics. I live in a humid climate. Should I not bother? Yes, you should not bother with trying glycerin as your daily spritz if you live in a humid environment. If you do use glycerin, then what's going to happen is your hair will constantly feel wet and it will be sticky, because when glycerin gets saturated with water, it becomes very sticky. So no, you do not need the glycerin if you live in a humid environment. You don't need to use it as much. I would just use regular water. Okay, so that's an answer to that question. And thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much. I didn't get to answer your questions. I apologize. Send me an email, susan@earthtonesnaturals.com. And the recording of this will be up tomorrow, and I will also redirect you to where you can download the notes. The notes are in slight detail, not as much as the webinar. So please, 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 take a look at this again. What I will ask of you are two things. I need you to share this. Share it with anybody that you feel would need this information. Remember, I said it's completely free. I love this. This is my passion. Hopefully it shows through. And share it. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, and basically go to the Naturalista Institute Facebook page and like the page. That's where I'll post some of the webinars as well, and anything else that is going on. So thank you, everyone. And I'm just going to redirect you right now to where you can download the notes. And if you have any more questions, then please let me know. Okay, thank you, everyone. all the way up. There we go. There's the link. Hopefully everyone sees that. You can copy and paste that link into your browser and you can download the notes. Any other questions? Again, Susan@earthtonesnaturals.com. Like Naturalista Institute, there's a lot more for you. Next week's webinar is going to be postponed until the following week. Unfortunately, I had a death in my family and I need to travel out of the country, and I will be in the sunny country of Barbados next week, Tuesday. I'll be thinking about all of you. And so the webinar will resume the following week and they will be weekly. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.